everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives, and welcome back, Hervoye Morić. Great to have you back. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Hello from sunny blue skies, Mexico.
Okay, and sunny blue skies here. Kind of, well, slightly overcast, but it's a nice day. Let's just put it that way. Boy, the past 2 days I've had one of my dream gigs. I get to go to Gunston Hall Plantation over in Virginia, and have hundreds of kids come through in groups, and I teach them about the music of the era, and I have my colonial outfit on and my tri-cornered hat, and I just like having the best old time. Beautiful day. And as you do those things, I got hooked on colonial era when I was in the 8th grade and went to the 8th grade field trip to Colonial Williamsburg, and thought this is the coolest thing I ever saw. So I wanted to learn how to play the fife, and eventually did. And now I do that, just as a side thing. But now it's my main thing now, because I don't have to practice law anymore, thank God. Anyway, that just brings me back to the whole idea of, patriotism, America, the American dream. And then it happened that I saw your show, most recent one on your podcast, Geopolitics and Empire, with Edward Luttwak, and he was talking about the American dream, and I was encouraged, because he said, it's not gone. You can get it back. And then he just basically rattled off his prescription, which sounded to me like, let's go back to the education that we got, back, when I was in high school. I mean, he talked about things like, he even said Greek. Is Greek, Latin, arithmetic, mathematics, civics, the traditional subjects, and stop all of this, social engineering studies that are really not helping the students become productive, rather helping them become dependent upon a super state that is, what my big concern is, that we have this super state emerging that's going to make it obvious that we don't have that liberty that our American dream promises us. So I thought I'd get your perspective on this whole question of, is the American dream still there? Is George Carlin correct when he says, well, of course, you have to, it's an American dream because you have to be dreaming to believe it. I still feel like it's the best dream going, so I'm sticking with my American dream. But here you are, a world traveler. So you've lived in many, many countries. Now you're in Mexico, and apparently thriving there, enjoying your life there. But you're not really an expat, because you still have Chicago and your roots in Chicago. So anyway, I'm looking forward to your perspective on the question of, what is there still an American dream? What is it? Is it something we want to get back to, or is it something to maybe just leave in the past?
I'm living the Mexican dream, but and just on what you said, I sent a link. I don't know if you're able to play videos, but Pete Hegseth just came out and made an announcement, and he said, no more social engineering, no more climate change worship, no more electric tanks, no more gender confusion, no more pronouns, no more excuses, no more quotas, no more woke BS that undermines commanders and command climates. We're laser focused on our mission of war fighting. And so, yeah, I don't think there's a clear answer to your question, or the question I posed to Lutwak. And by the way, it's insane the amount of heat I get every week for daring to have conversations with people. Like it's absolutely incredible, the message that I get from my own listeners, even paid subscribers. It's like, look, I'm just having a conversations, exploring, getting people's views. And just for that, I get it. People just don't understand. And Lutwak, he is when I was in Geneva, as I mentioned, my professor assigned Turbo Capitalism for us to read. And then you study the background of someone like Lutwak. I mean, this guy's, love him or hate him, he's fascinating person. He's works. The governments call him up when they have problems. Like the Mexican government had some issues with the cartel. They call him up. He comes to Mexico. They pay him nicely, and he advises them how to deal with the problem. He told me he was in I spent 3 years in Semey, Semipalatinsk, Kazakhstan. He's like, oh, I had a good time in Semey. Like, he's been everywhere. This dude, he's been through Mexico, and so you got to listen to people like that. And he is a Zionist, obviously, but and he wrote that book on the endangered dream. And if you look at it, like what he said, his forecast was accurate, and so I juxtapose that with some of the people that I talk to behind the scenes, like some of my podcast guests or the people that I know in the U.S. who are my age, and I always ask them, what's the job market like and all that. And pretty much everyone so far that I've been talking to has been telling me that it's tough, it's difficult, and so on the one hand, I think he's got a point that America's not going to collapse tomorrow. And if there's a will, there's a way, so to speak.
Yeah.
You can still do it, but it's for the middle class, it's getting much more difficult. And I was even thinking here in Mexico, like they're raising our quota for our gated community again, and not a big deal, but I'm thinking like they're raising everything all the time except for our wages. Like my wage for the past year has stayed the same, hasn't increased, but they're raising the quota that we have to pay for the gated community because water's going up, energy's going up. But it's the same case always. The wages don't move. It's just everything else goes up, and I think this is how the system is designed. But on the American dream, again, I think it'll be less worse. Actually, I don't even know. Maybe some places you're better off in other countries, but so far, I think there's still hope. But I think it's getting tougher. It's getting tougher.
Yeah, I agree with him that we've got a lot to do, especially with regard to orienting our people to being productive in a physical way, doing things to build things physically, and reorganizing things like a local factory, for instance. Just the idea that a community could not only survive but thrive without government handouts has got to be revived. And right now, everybody, I think, is so dependent in one way or another. Myself included. I get Social Security. That's a tough question. To how could we get the American mentality turned back towards that productive economy that people like our friend Tony Chaikin talk about from the 19th century. I've been reading his volume 2 of Who We Are. I hope people will pick it up. If you read Tony's version of things, you realize that we've had an awful lot of terrible decisions, and we've had a lot of bad presidents, and we've gotten into wars we should have never got into. But at the same time, we are we're making progress toward something good, and that something good, I think, may be the American dream. So I don't know. Maybe he's looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, but he's acknowledging the fight that we've had, and the biggest fight that we've had that continues is the fight against the British Empire. And to recognize that, one of the real problems that we've had in developing ourselves as that ideal country that the founding fathers, we think, wanted us to be, has been the constant attempts by the old empire to control us and to grab us back and to make America Great Britain again, as has been said. That to me is still the biggest impediment, because of the combination of that, what you and I talk about, the Atlantic alliance with the City of London and the Wall Street that tend to be, the reason that everybody is getting tied into that one universal economic system that they want us all to fall into. But the Maha people, the MAGA people, and the Maha people, the ones that really, the ones that are the supporters of Trump because of his stances on things like sovereignty and rebuilding American productivity. There's a lot of them, and I remember talking to some friends that build Jeeps, for instance, and they're proud of working for Jeep and making those Jeeps. They celebrate their factories. They're happy. That kind of thing could come back and really re-inspire a new generation, I hope.
I mean, yeah, we should definitely try. One thing you mentioned, so many things are happening at once. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you mentioned the British elite, and unfortunately, their plans continue for the world government. It's not stopping; it is advancing. And what I would argue now that we're dealing with is the technocracy again. So you had the banking oligarchy, and so now they've added this layer of technocracy, which they're now trying to insidiously install so people don't notice. Like you see with Doge. First they say they're going to cut the government, but it's a bait and switch. Doge is coming in. They said they're firing 10,000 IRS, 20,000, I don't know, 20%. You're like, yeah. And you're like, wait a minute, they're not going to get rid of the IRS. They're installing an API, like this computer software interface that is going to be installed above the IRS's system so they can even better manage everyone's finances and make sure they pay they can extract as many taxes as possible. So it's kind of like, this is the stuff that is going on. And so now we're battling this techno banking oligarchy. So we're struggling with that. And as you say, trying to bring back manufacturing. I still can't make sense of the whole tariff stuff and there's the smart people giving a variety of analysis. And, and people point out every day, Trump is saying the opposite thing every day. And some people say, "Oh, that's the art of the deal." Others point out that he's an idiot. It's kind of like, I don't know what. Nobody really knows what is going on until the next shoe drops, right? Until the dollar crashes or it doesn't crash and China suffers. Like until we see fruit born of what's going on. And I think the other danger, I don't know if it was Lutwak or someone who mentioned that the danger could be that the reindustrialization that happens in America will be more related to the tech stuff.
Yeah.
And then that's right. And then that's won't necessarily be, will that be good for humans? There's a guy I follow, a really smart guy on X. His name is Lawrence King. He's a business guy. And he just tweeted, I saw this morning. He says, been back in Europe a few days. I arrive at the airport to go into a store to buy some water. No staff. Pay by machine. I go to the gym. No staff. Pay by machine. I go to buy a jacket. No staff. Pay by machine. In 10 plus years, the human experience will be completely gone. And it's sad. And I'm just thinking, where are these people who work? What are we going to do with, what jobs will there be?
People used to live off of nuts and fruits and hunting and fishing. And if it weren't for the fact that we've completely destroyed Mother Nature in all the, quote, civilized parts of the world, that wouldn't be such a problem. I live down here in southern Maryland, where a lot of people still hunt and fish and go crabbing, for instance. But the dream of being self-sufficient is just not there. It's a rare person that can say I'm off the grid now. those are people that I've always admired in my life. People that could go out and build a log cabin in the middle of nowhere and make a living out of it. That to me is very commendable, and I think it's the kind of people that a lot of us in our hearts would really like to be. Would be like to just no, I don't want a day job. No, I don't want to deal with taxes. I'm on my own. I guess I don't want to say libertarian because that brings all the libertarian stuff with it, but just the idea of being on your own, that that idea is not it's not a bad thing to think. Well, okay, I don't go to work every day, so I don't see all those people. I don't go to the store and buy a sandwich. I don't, there's a lot of interaction that I'm going to miss. But why am I really alive anyway? Am I alive to be a cog in a machine? Uh, or, maybe just soften that and say, I just want to be a worker among workers, a friend among friends, and get along. Or is there something unique about everybody that they, if they're given the time, will be able to develop into something really, really amazing? It's people that have you know unknown talents that I guess Elon Musk might be an example. Not judgmenting for good or for bad, but the man he obviously has an amazing brain. A lot of people could be developing things that would just be tremendous for mankind if they didn't have to have that day job or work in the mine or wherever people are, virtually enslaved in a lot of the world right now. So, I think the American dream is something to keep alive and to try to say yes, we are making progress.
I mean, it's still kicking. People still go to the U.S. It's still my plan B or C or D if I have to abscond for whatever reason from Mexico. I go back to the U.S., look for work or whatnot. I mean, it's just a massive place with a lot of resources, the U.S. And so I don't think it's going away anytime soon. But I think we also have to keep in the back of our minds that, we would a black swan event could take down America. In theory, a collapse of the dollar could lead to something worse than the 1929. It could be the American version of the 1980s Russia. That is possible. I think we have to keep in mind. But until that happens, we got to keep on trucking. And again, yeah, my worry is the middle class aspect. So there's folks that I know of in the U.S. who are doing well in terms of upper middle class and beyond. But for the majority, it's increasingly becoming just surviving. Surviving on credit cards, mortgages, just being able to pay the bills. I was reading an article yesterday in Croatia. That's how it is. But I think you're right. There is a trend of people going the way as you're talking about, sort of disengaging, finding alternative ways to make a living, and just consuming less. I think this minimalism, and I've realized that as well. If you consume way less, you need much less. I don't need that fancy car with this insurance and that cell phone, what do you call it, plan and or whatever. And so life is more liberating when you just don't need anything. I think 2 weeks ago I included in one of my Substack analysis the story from Real Clear Wire about a very old American businessman, and he says it's not dead. He says, I've lived the American dream. Some say the dream is dead today, but I beg to differ. One of the great promises of this country is that an estimated 400,000 to 500,000 new businesses were started the year I started at Quill. So he's talking about like 50, 60, 70 years ago. Annually, 500,000 businesses were started. And he's saying today there are 5.5 million applications in the US for new businesses every year. And he says the population, he says he's talking about 1956. So the population was 175 million, and today it's 340 million. So there were 10 times as many new businesses started in America, last year compared to 1956. And he says what these numbers show is that vast numbers of our citizens believe that they can fulfill their entrepreneurial aspirations, which gives lie to the claim that the American dream is obsolete. And I think that's part of the thing going forward in this techno economy. I was just thinking, like, me as a podcaster, 15, 20 years ago, no such thing existed. This didn't even exist.
Right.
This what I'm doing now. So in 10, 20 years, there's going to be stuff people will be doing that was never a job, in 2025. And so, and that's something, I guess, that's a strong point. No.
Isn't it? Though you don't see them, I love the idea that there's millions of startups, but I'm wondering, if 90% of them are digital startups, or things that are not going to do what I think Luttwak was suggesting, and that is to rebuild physical economy, and that's the big LaRouche organization thing, is to rebuild physical economy. Another thing that Luttwak said was we need to have shipbuilding. We need to build our own ships here in the United States, because if we don't, we're not going to have a navy, because the countries that build ships are going to have better ships than we have. It's just, again, if we want to have sovereignty, we've got to be productive. We've got to build things, and certainly we can't give up the oceans. Right now, I think about those aircraft carriers over there off of Yemen, and launching drones at the Houthis and getting the drones shot down. And then at the same time, we have this incredible war in Ukraine, where it's drone versus drone, and they keep it's like a factory for creating the best drone. As long as they keep this war going, the technology is going to keep getting better. So, I'll get this, and then you'll get this, to get better, and then get better on that. And who wins there? Well, the arms manufacturers now have got the plans for the most lethal drone that was ever dreamed of, as a result of just letting these two countries fight it out and kill people with them. That technological aspect of warfare. Can you imagine that coming to the United States? We don't have. I mean, we have no idea what kind of war could come here if we let the world slip into World War.
Yeah, and on your comments, Luttwak tweeted the other day. He said it's unfortunate that Trump has not spelled out his purpose in imposing tariffs, the reindustrialization of the U.S. economy. When COVID started, he discovered that there was no U.S. production of masks, gowns. Now the U.S. Navy cannot be without a shipbuilding industry, etc. And then you had Marco Rubio yesterday say, as China undertakes the fastest, most rapid, most expansive peacetime military buildup in the history of the world, the United States doesn't even have a shipbuilding industry for our Navy. It's not just that we're not spending money on it. We don't have the ability to do it because we allowed the nation to be deindustrialized. And then, to your point, I just tweeted this morning a story from yesterday from Russia. President Putin ordered the government and the military to speed up the development of unmanned and robotic systems, with a special focus on USVs and laser systems capable of countering unmanned tech. And I'm following this account from Samuel Bendet on X, he analyzes military robotics, drones, AI, all that military weapon stuff development out of Russia, and he's posting all these crazy clips of all these like interceptor rocket drone. 2 hours ago, he posted all this crazy stuff that is being iterated on the battlefields in Russia and Ukraine. And what you just said, I think the ultimate goal is, without the pretexts of these wars that are going on, they wouldn't be able to develop these killer robotic
Right.
Skynet. And that goes back to what when you and I have both talked to people like Yuri Roshka and others, that like we tongue-in-cheek call the Ukraine war the not war. I mean, look, what Lutwak said, that either Putin is faking it and he's, like I said, globalist, or he's weak, because he's not going, let's take Kiev in 5 days, which he could have. Nikola Mikovic, who I've had on my show, Serbian, he just tweeted, I wanted to share this story from today. Russian ex-commander Popov jailed for 5 years, stripped of rank for fraud. Nikola says that the Kremlin is imprisoning commanders and politicians who advocate for fighting until victory. So it's like, and there's have been a number of cases where the Kremlin has jailed military men or patriots. It's like they're saying, "Hey, whoa, dude, you're too patriotic." It's like, what? Isn't that the whole point? That's kind of a tell that the Kremlin doesn't want. They want to keep this on a slow burn, the Ukraine war.
Wow,
what purpose?
that sounds so much. That is Vietnam, man. That is the whole thing that my father's generation lived through. The generals, would say, yeah, let's go kick their butts, destroy them, come home, put our feet back, sip on a nice cool one, and relax for the rest of our lives, because we don't want to spend our lives fighting wars. We want to get the war over with today. We want to win. And now what you're saying, the same thing's happening in Russia. Well, this tells me that, as in the Vietnam War, there was an ulterior motive for the war. It wasn't to fight communism. It wasn't to win the hearts and minds of the South Vietnamese people, whatever that means. It was to preserve the secret stuff going on, the heroin trade, the narcotics, all of the stuff that was making money for these insiders that are trying to take over the world secretly. These the Five Eyes, the spooks, the bad guys, and so that's probably what's going on, is that Putin's hands are tied by similar forces that are profiting like crazy from letting the war go on, whether it's drugs or whether it's just the weaponry or some other type of trafficking. And Lord knows a lot of trafficking has gone through Ukraine over the years of all kinds, some of it right into Zelensky's nose.
Yeah, and just going back, I think they're building out Skynet, and all parties, because I've argued before, they're all down with this technocratic world algocracy, and so they're now building all manner of automated tech war. Palantir and Anduril just published a crazy, insane video, Palmer Lucky, of the stuff that they're doing under the sea. I mean, it's literally, they're building out Terminator, Skynet, and I think, and they're using the pretexts of Ukraine, of Gaza, and Iran, of Taiwan, to build these unmanned systems. I'm reading now they're bringing online rapidly these humanoid robots, Hyundai or whatever. They're buying. I the story I mentioned in my analysis 2 weeks ago, that Ukraine, like last year, their contract, they had only 6 contracts, and in the numbers were in terms of hundreds of these automated, drones, whatever. This year, the contracts are in the 30 for hundreds of, and they want thousands and thousands of these things now. So it's picking up pace. And Jeffrey Sachs. So someone cut some clips yesterday, which really got me going. And so Jeffrey Sachs just gave an interview on a podcast called UN and China podcast series. Jeffrey Sachs is not your friend. This is what I don't get. These BRICS.
But hang on a second before you go further, because I'm kind of vague on what Skynet is, and so I just Googled it, and I come up with a Wikipedia.
I mean, it's from the movie Terminator. It's just that idea. Yeah,
I forgot the movie Terminator. I don't. I guess I have to go watch it. But Okay, so give me the idea. So what we're talking about is a fictional concept that you're saying is being realized as we speak.
Yeah, sci-fi concept where basically the machines take over, the AI takes over, the algorithm takes over, and obviously there's an elite that's behind that. And they're like the wizards that put themselves behind the curtain. They're the men
Yeah.
in the high castle, and we can't get to them because they've built out this massive technological sort of fortress which they control, and it runs everything. You go to, like I just mentioned, you go to the store, everything's automated. There's no human interaction. You can't talk to anybody. If the algorithm or whoever, if the men behind the machine say access denied, you can't. There's no manager to talk to. That's it. Game over. And then they've got the drone policing that's becoming more commonplace now. And I read stories all the time in U.S. cities, local police departments. They're now purchasing drones, and the first response to whatever event in your local town in the United States, they deploy a drone. They don't send cops. I mean, it's now becoming more increasing. I mean, you can read like local Fox News stories or whatever, local NBC, ABC stories. I've seen every week. I see them there. Local police department just got a drone, and someone makes a 911 call. They deploy the drone. It sees everything, and so that's kind of sky. And this will be the case everywhere in Russia, China, Europe, U.S., and we're going to be managed and controlled by these technological systems. And these drones they can kill people. I mean, there's stuff even beyond just drones, right? You got the robo dogs that are armed. You got the drones that are armed. You got mini big tanks that are autonomous with no one in them. Planes, helicopters, like just go down the humanoid RoboCop.
Freaks me out just looking at I'm on X, of course, and I follow Elon Musk, and he's bragging about these really human looking robots that he's mass producing. I mean, this is the science fiction movie iRobot, with the thousands of these. Who knows how many thousands and millions of them there are in the deep underground military bases that Catherine Austin Fitz tells us about, and other places, just ready to pounce if somebody gets out of line in the new world order. It's like. When Biden was in power, we had the Klaus Schwab kind of, you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. It's a soft sell. It's going to be great. You'll have access to all this stuff, and you can just rent things, and it'll be easy. And now Klaus had to retire. He had to step down. The Pope, God rest his soul. Those soft power leaders, relatively soft, are now gone, and now it's the bad cop coming along. That's
Mark Carney, the guy who's replacing Schwab. I mean, look, he's the Nestle guy. He's got an eye like the Terminator. And I'm looking at clips. What's his name? Peter Brayback or something.
Did you see his eye, man?
Yeah, and he's talking about water. Like, it comes out, you are not allowed more than 50 liters water per day. And it's like he's got he lives in a mansion, whatever, and it's just, it's absolute insanity. And we keep getting worse. And people, I don't understand this logic. People are just so short-sighted. It's like, oh, it will be Trudeau. Yeah, but here comes Mark Carney. Like they applaud Klaus Schwab stepping down. Like, it doesn't mean anything. Nothing is going to change. The same system marches on, and they put this Nestle guy in. It's just, yeah.
It's crazy. And what he talks about is he wants everybody to have water. It's water is a human right. He wants to make sure that you get your human right. However, the title to the water is still going to remain, with Nestle or with him or with the Bush family down in Paraguay or wherever.
It'll be tokenized. I mean, the plan is here, and they've alluded to this in their own writings. the fake climate change narrative is losing steam.
Yeah.
People need a threat that they can grab on. If the threat is too, I don't know, esoteric, or what's the word, too, like, it's not concrete enough.
Amorphous.
Yeah, they're not going to buy it. And so they've said themselves, okay, like, they go back to the drawing board. Okay, like, they're not buying the international terrorism. They're not buying the pandemic stuff. They're not buying climate change. Water.
COVID.
Everyone drinks water. So now they're are creating this artificial scarcity water crisis. And yes, there are places in the world where there's less water, but like, we've gotten along great. I mean, even in where I was fascinated when I lived in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. I wonder, like, well, how do they're living in the desert, and where do they get the water? I mean, they just dug in the ground, and they had water was under the ground, and they had wells. Like, it's been like that way since forever. And you had a guy who would deliver the water in a barrel to your tent, yurts, instead of you having to get it yourself, and created a local job for the guy. And what's the big deal about water? So I think that's their new climate change, is this water crisis, which obviously is all just about control. They're going to take over control of the water resources, and like, none of us can survive without having access to the water. So that's where they're going next.
I wanted to ask you, I'm changing the subject now, because this has been a big topic this week in my social media feed, and it's the question of autism. And, Robert F. Kennedy famously saying he's going to find the source of autism, by September. And it's got to be environmental. In other words, the idea that autism is genetic is simply wrong. It's out. That's not happening. So something is changing the biology of infants, and in a way that is more and more evident everywhere. Everywhere I see the effects of autism in my life. I don't know if anybody in America could say they don't. And of course, we're seeing people in the media now. I think famously there was a little autistic girl that went up to comfort the image of Jesus Christ as he was doing one of those processions in Italy with the cross and all, and just a lot more visibility, and the idea that yes, autism is here. It's part of our life. It's part of humanity, and it's we need to accept it. And on the other hand, we have a great division in our country between people who accept the narrative that is, oh, well, autism's always been there. It's just that we're now finally diagnosing it, or we're now seeing it, or we're now acknowledging it instead of hiding it away. But it's always been there. Whereas on the other side, no, it's coming from our overly zealous jab industry, and you see these pictures that horrify me of a little baby with like 80 needles laying around, pointing at the baby. I'm horrified that our medical system is indulging to what is just an incredible amount of injections. And so I guess my question is this an issue in your world in Mexico, or as you talk to people around the world? Is autism becoming something that perhaps the mainstream is going to actually confront, or is it still what I think is a political problem of the people that hate Bobby Kennedy are going to always not believe anything that he says or anything that comes from Children's Health Defense. And so, it's political. So with that, your thoughts on whether autism is something that we can hopefully make some progress on, or even find the cause and the solution.
I mean, I think the solution and many of the things that we talk about, it comes from the people. Like if we just stopped complying, it would all go away tomorrow. I had a guest on, I haven't published it yet, on COVID. If everyone said, no, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm not doing this, then tomorrow, like the authority, like I always use the example of Mexico City, where they tried to implement a city of 25 million people. They tried to implement the mandatory QR codes. You entered a shop anywhere, scan the code before you go in.
Hmm.
Nobody complied, because it's 25 million people. I mean, you just can't. A week later, the mayor's like, okay, just kidding, never mind, forget what we said, just keep calm and carry on. And so whether it's COVID or autism, like outside of America, I think the rates of autism are less, because, again, who has the highest vaccine schedule? USA, 70 plus injections. That's not the case like in Mexico or other countries I've lived in, Croatia or Kazakhstan. So that right there tells you what, for me, principally, it's like 80%, 90% injections is the cause. And then, of course, the environmental factors. I'm having a heck of a time trying to protect my kids, because it's just become so commonplace. And lately, I don't care at this point. I refer to the masses as the unwashed masses, because seriously, like, they are. I mean, you go around like the standard Mexican birthday parties we go to every week with the kids. They got the piñatas, and the piñatas, they break them open and they're filled with poison.
Oh,
Literally, like all the candies. You
oh,
look at the ingredients, it's like red 5, yellow 5, blue 5, titanium dioxide, aspartame, which is like a
oh
neurotoxin that hits your
no.
brain. And like all the Mexicans, and like they're eating the potato chips and the Coca-Colas. And I'm like, what are you people, like, parents, like, and then you try to tell them, and it's like they're zombified. I'm like, oh, everyone else does it. Like, oh, like I'm the crazy guy, you conspiracy guy, and it's just so obviously those candies that the kids are exposed to from like
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 year olds every week, every month, consuming this crap, that's going to have an effect on them. So
Yep.
obviously there's that environment, the food, and then environmental effects. But I think the injections are the principal ones. And so the solution is just enough critical mass of parents saying, no, I'm not injecting my kid. So if more people just stopped injecting, stop feeding their kids this crap, you'd have a decline in the autism. You don't even need the government, to do anything. But you know,
I I want to give my wife Marcia credit for a talk we had a week ago about correlation uh, versus causation. And the idea of what you just said is, you have, two graphs that are going up about the same way at the same time, and they're getting higher. And one of them is the incidence of autism, and the other one is the amount of jabs. And they're going up, and it looks like, wow, uh, everybody can see that, this causes that. But that's not true. It's not necessarily true at all. All you really have in that graph is correlation. But the big point is that correlation alone should make us stop. Correlation is a danger sign that probably there is causation. We got to make sure, we got to nail it down, but don't just blow past it and saying, well, correlation is not causation, because it may be the only danger sign that you're going to get before it's too late. And the second thing I just have to say about the food is that when I got my diagnosis back in 2023, my wife had been already a vegan and studying health and eating and all, but she has really risen to great heights in this field now, and I am so confident in the food that I'm eating. And it's just so when I hear stories like that, and I realize all around the world, children are being fed poison constantly. It's just another heartbreaker, just like the autism story. And yeah, if people will stop watching, nightly news and absorbing their reality from NPR and believing in the insanity of the Democratic Party's politics, if they could just step away from the Trump derangement syndrome long enough to examine the reality that we're talking about. We're not crazy goobers driving pickup trucks and shooting off shotguns, but here we are being classed as under citizens because we don't believe in the great liberal version of reality, which I don't know. The people could stop it. Of course they could if they weren't just so enthralled with the narrative, and they don't want to let go of it.
Yeah, I've been able to defeat my guilty pleasure, my urge, where just as an example, when I go to, we just buy like foods that are not processed, and the kids have like yogurt and fruits for like just vegetables, fruits, meat, yogurt, not processed foods, and I'll buy them cereal that's organic and it's made, it's Mexican made. It's got just like corn and oats, and the coloring is from spirulina, like from foods. The coloring is actually made like carrots and spirulina, and so it's all natural.
Uh-huh.
And I used to like to buy Captain Crunch because when I was a kid, I loved Captain Crunch peanut butter, the red package of Captain Crunch. But now it's bioengineered and GMO. And last year I'd buy a box and eat it like every once in a while for a few months, and I would feel worse afterward. But finally, I've just come to the conclusion, like, I'm not doing it. I don't care. Like I've overcome my desire to buy anything bio engineered, and I thought this was fun. I came across this meme. There's a great website called Becoming Minimalist, and they said, I don't know who needs to hear this, but living your life to the fullest doesn't have to include an Amazon delivery today. And I think that's one of the things people just love to consume this stuff. But I did want to mention Jeffrey Sachs, if we can go.
Yeah, let's get back to our good friend Jeffrey Sachs, because he gets an awful lot of airtime, doesn't he?
That you have to question why. And so
Yeah.
someone cut some clips. So he did this podcast, and one thing he said, so this is the guy that's the hero when it comes to geopolitics. And I've questioned for the longest time what this BRICS stuff that they sell us. And I think it's just a rebranding of the New World Order. And then for me, this explains why you get artificially boosted these multipolar people, like excessively, like they're boosted so beyond organic that you kind of question why. And so Sachs comes out, he says, I would like a global tax on CO2 emissions, by the way. I'd like, but wait, so he goes, I'd like a global tax on CO2 emissions.
Oh,
I'd like a
great.
global tax on international financial transactions. I'd like a global tax on aviation. I'd like a global tax on international shipping. And then he continues, he says, we need international taxes that go straight to the UN system. I think we need a fundamental rethink of this global financial architecture. And one step will be a meeting this summer, June 30th in Spain. The reason for that summit is we don't have a financial system to truly finance the sustainable development goals. And so I'm arguing like that it's this Hegelian dialectic, thesis, Western Empire bad, plus antithesis, global South good. And the synthesis is, hey, let's construct a new system, a totalitarian world government, which is what BRICS, is doing. And so this guy's like, and it's basically, he's like, we need to create a one global IRS where everyone pays taxes to the world government directly to finance it. And so we can build out this totalitarian world state. And so it's kind of like they boomerang you. So he speaks well on geopolitics, but then he boomerangs you right back into the world state, which what I feel a lot of the BRICS people are doing. And someone pointed out he's married to an Ehrlich, who's his wife is, her last name is Ehrlich, and I don't know if she's the sister, but she's related to Paul Ehrlich. You know Paul Ehrlich? He's
Oh,
the population bomb guy who says we
yeah.
need to cull the planet. Like Sachs is married to the Ehrlich family. He's worked with Soros in the past. He destroyed Russia.
Wait
And
a minute. He didn't destroy Russia.
I mean, I think he went and helped with
He
the
was
90s.
he was just a little helper. He was one of the little guys, and he really didn't see, that he thought they were doing good work, man. You got to give Jeffrey a no. I'm 100% with you, and I cannot figure out why my friends at the LaRouche organization are looking to him as some kind of a wise speaker, because it's very clear to me that his loyalty is to the old financial system and the empire that wants to control everything. And he blames the United States for everything, and that to me is like, no, you have to. The things that have gone on in the world since World War II have not been all engineered by Washington. Europe is very responsible for the situation of the world right now. And Great Britain, I mean, the nerve of do you see what they did yesterday? They announced that they're going to authorize an experiment to block the sun to fight global warming. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. That little bitty island, that little bitty tiny speck on the globe is going to control the amount of sunlight that we get in the entire world? And they think that they can do that? I mean, I'm like, if you want to control the light that falls on Great Britain, if you can figure out a way to do that, I won't stop you. But don't. My God, what kind of megalomania thinks that they can just run an experiment that might send the world into the next dark age?
There's an amusing
Crazy.
Someone put in the comments, quote, "Nuke London is the only way," end quote. I like this tweet yesterday from John Ruddick. He says, regarding the news you mentioned, "World should unite and declare war on Britain. Global warming is an Aztec-style death cult." So, yeah.
I tell you, and we always say, but we love the British people. Oh, we love our English and our Welsh and our, good old Saxons,
I've never been to the UK. Now they have these electronic travel authorizations, these social credit Orwellian thought crime forms. I don't have plans to go to the UK anytime soon, but I thought just for kicks, maybe when I have free time one of these days, I'm going to fill out the electronic travel authorization form for the UK. I'll pay the 10 or 20 pounds, whatever, just to see if I pass or if I don't, and if you don't pass, that means you cannot visit the UK. So I'm curious to what my social credit score is for the UK.
Well, I think you should take a cruise liner, just go across, to the ocean on a ship, and then when you get there, they'll have to take you then, won't they?
They'll just deport you. I mean, if you don't have your ETA, I guess they'll, by plane or boat, I think is the same. I don't know.
Anyway, I'm not so sure I need to see old London again. Yeah, there's cameras everywhere. I mean, London is just a technological nightmare. It's an Orwellian, almost too creepy. I don't like it. I want my free open spaces. I want to live in a Woody Guthrie country. This land is my land. This land is your land, from California to the New York Island, and the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me, and I'm just going to go walk on that ribbon of highway and enjoy the beautiful skyway, and think about the diamond desert in front of me, and just love, love, love America. That's the American dream for me, is to just have that feeling. I don't need to go out there and be a Forrest Gump and run across the country, and
Well, that'd
I
be
just
fun.
wanted in my heart, in my dreams.
On the comments, someone made this statement. They're correct. It says the UK will put Hervoye in a migrant detention camp. That's probably what would happen. But yeah, every once in a blue moon, I'll throw on some, country roads. You know, Bruce Springsteen. Yes, I know politically he's a freak, COVID-idiot, but still, I like his music. I watched the documentary that was made of him making his album "This Letter to You." He's a good musician, and I like his music. So I'm able to sort of excise his COVID-idiot part, and
Yeah.
just enjoy his music, which speaks about Americana. And someday I might, I might, I'd love to just do a drive through of the U.S. with my family. Although honestly, I'm kind of afraid. Civil asset forfeiture. I might get stopped by cops and robbed of everything, or I might get detained by. Did you hear the stories that are being reported now? The Department of Homeland Security is sending letters to U.S. citizens telling them to self-deport. There's even U.S. citizens in jail in Florida. They've, I think it was ICE or someone said that they were not U.S. citizens, but they are, and they're in jail, and they've even produced their birth certificate. But because there's a clash legally between ICE and the local state police, the police sorry, we can't get you out, even though you're wrongly accused of not being a U.S. citizen. I'm like, this is insane. What's happening now?
That is insane. It's terrifying, and we have to fight it. I mean, even this guy. No, we run out of time, but the Abrego Garcia case, to me, hey, half of the country wants the guy brought back here. Let's bring him back here. Let's have another hearing. Let's have an extradition hearing, and have witnesses, and whatever happens. Whole lot cheaper than and more productive for the country than it would be to just keep on drawing that line in the sand and saying, oh no, he's a terrorist, or he was violent, or he had 2 shots at it. Well, so what? The American people, the liberal side of us, wants to have a process that they can feel is due process. I would say give it to them. This radical left versus right thing is how they get away with building the technocracy, man.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I guess before we leave, I guess the other 2 pieces of interesting news was I just did an interview with Abhijit Chavda, he's almost got 1 million followers on YouTube. He's an Indian geopolitical analyst, and just a day or 2 ago, there was this Pakistani terror attack, and so now things are escalating again between Pakistan and India. And Bilderberg, it's been reported that in the next meeting of Bilderberg will be probably in Stockholm, Sweden. So there you go.
The house that built, I guess.
That's right, Carl built. Yes, and someone said in the comments, was it make sure you get your real ID, Hervoye? What's funny? I've always had a U.S. passport since I was less than 1 year old. I've never needed the real ID thing, because if you have your U.S. passport. But Kristi Noem, head of DHS, came out and said, don't delay, get your real ID. It's the MAGA thing to do. So
Oh, so many people are fighting it, but you know, like in my case in Maryland, they did real ID years ago, and so you know, all my driver license is a real ID, and it's no way around it. They got you. All right, Hervoye, my friend, I'll talk to you again soon. It's been a real pleasure, and thanks everybody for tuning in here at McDuff Lives. Marcia and I will be off tomorrow. I have got to go and see about my physician. So we will be back Monday. Hope everybody has a great afternoon. Bye now.